At an oval track, a sharp voice cut through the air and pushed the students to run faster. It told them to give everything they had. The teacher reminded them that this run would affect their final term grades. No one dared slow down. Then the voice announced that Lin Chin was in the lead. Chin kept running, telling himself he could hold it. Just a little more. He glanced to the side and caught the girl watching him. That one moment of distraction cost him. A group of runners suddenly closed in. Chin braced himself, already knowing what was coming. They laughed and asked why he was trying so hard. They mocked him, calling him trash who couldn't even perform a basic beast transformation. They asked what he was trying to prove. One by one, they transformed. Fur, claws, muscle, real power. Then one of them lunged. Chin was slammed face first onto the track. Another stepped in and told him he was in the way and hit him again without hesitation. They ran past him like he didn't exist, laughing as they went. One of them said he was probably the only student in the entire school who couldn't transform. The teacher called out, asking if Chin was okay. He barely managed to block the next hit aimed at his head. Still, the impact rattled him. He bit his tongue just to stay conscious. The girl watched in horror as blood spilled from his mouth and hit the ground. The others saw it and laughed harder. They said he deserved it for being slow, for being in the way, for existing like that. They looked down at him and asked if he wanted to fight. Chin didn't answer. He forced himself to stay calm, forced himself to swallow it all. He decided to keep his distance. Chin told the teacher he needed to go to the infirmary. The teacher nodded and told him to go. Behind him, one student scoffed and said Chin had no self-awareness, that he didn't even realize how annoying he was. But they all agreed on one thing. Sooner or later, they'd make him kneel and beg. Beast transformation was everything in this world. It was the process of forming a bond with a beast, gaining power that went beyond human limits. Everyone in the school could do it, everyone except Chin. Ever since he could remember, he had tried to connect with beasts. But even getting close to one was difficult, let alone forming a bond. And yet, he could feel something inside him, a power, waiting. He didn't know what it was, but he believed it would come, eventually. Hey. The voice snapped him out of his thoughts. Chin looked up and saw the cat girl standing in front of him. She crossed her arms and told him he was dead last again. Then she told him to hurry up and kneel. She smirked and said she was second to last, and honestly, beating him every time was starting to get boring. Her beast transformation rate was just 1%. Garfield. Chin looked at her and asked for the milk. She blinked, surprised. She asked how he knew. Chin said she always brought milk whenever she tried to comfort him. She narrowed her eyes and told him to guess what she was about to say. At the same time, they both spoke. They said she heard he got beaten up again, that she was going to teach those guys a lesson, that she suddenly got a stomachache, and that she'd do it next time, perfectly in sync. Shocked that he already knew, she asked if he was about to awaken some kind of beast of prophecy. Chin told her to stop reading so many tomato novels and asked what a beast of prophecy even was. Garfield pointed out how strange it was. Chin seemed sharp when it came to reading people, yet he still couldn't transform. Chin replied that reading people was simply how he protected himself. Garfield said she'd help him out. After all, they were buddies. She told him she had organized a study group that night, something about reviewing the 365 methods of beast transformation. Then she invited him to meet at the small woods behind the mountain. Chin raised an eyebrow. Her in a study group? He said he'd rather get some extra sleep. Garfield quickly grabbed his sleeve and begged him to come. He looked down at her trembling hand, then at her face. Our boy knew something's wrong. She bit her lip. Then suddenly, she burst out laughing. She said she was just kidding. There was no way she'd reveal her secret method so easily. She turned away and waved him off, telling him to just watch her back while he tried to catch up. Chin said nothing. He just stood there, watching her walk away. That night. Garfield moved carefully through the woods. Every step was cautious, her eyes scanning the darkness around her. Two silhouettes emerged from the shadows. They greeted her casually, like they had been waiting. They asked why she came alone. They told her to bring Chin. Garfield hesitated for a second, then said Chin had diarrhea and couldn't make it. A loud slap cut through the silence. Her head snapped to the side. One of the men stepped closer and asked if she remembered their group's study trick. He explained it again, slowly, like she was stupid. Direct food supplementation. According to him, it improved transformation rate far more than any training ever could. But now there was a problem. Chin didn't show up, which meant they had nothing to eat for their midnight snack. Garfield's eyes widened, her body froze. Horror sank in. Then, a voice suddenly rang out from the distance. It shouted that they were from the security department and demanded to know what was going on. The men stiffened. They turned toward the sound. Garfield didn't wait. She tried to run, but in an instant, a hand grabbed her and covered her mouth. She struggled for a second, then froze when she recognized him. It was Chin. He leaned close and told her not to make a sound. Then he glanced toward the men and quietly asked, "Was this the study group she was talking about?" Garfield's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't understand it. Why was he here? Chin told Garfield they would talk about the study group later. For now, they needed to get out. Not far away, a phone lay on the ground. It played a looping recording, a voice claiming to be from the security department. One of the beastmen found it. He stopped. Then his expression twisted. Fake. The others quickly realized it too. Their faces hardened as they began searching the area, calling out for Garfield, this time with anger. Chin stayed low behind the bushes, watching every movement. Waiting. But then, he felt someone behind him. He turned and froze. It was her, the girl he liked. She tilted her head slightly and asked what they were playing. Chin immediately recognized her. Sherry. His expression changed. He told her to run, said it wasn't safe here. But in the next second, his instinct screamed. Without hesitation, he shoved Garfield away and told her to get back. She was sent flying, crashing into a tree, her body going limp as she lost consciousness. Sherry smiled. She said it was impressive, how quickly he realized. The beastman rushed over and addressed her respectfully. Lady Sherry. Chin's eyes narrowed. So they were all working together. Before he could react, threads shot forward. Sherry's webs wrapped around his wrist instantly, tightening like restraints. She stepped closer, calmly saying it was only natural. After all, he was the one she wanted to capture. Chin struggled, but the silk only dug deeper into his skin. Sherry leaned in slightly, studying him. She said it was strange. He couldn't even perform beast transformation, yet his body had this inexplicable pull. Something about him made it impossible for her to look away. Chin gritted his teeth as the threads bit into him. Sherry's eyes flickered. Then she realized it. The scent. His blood. She inhaled lightly and smiled, saying it smelled sweet, ancient, pure. Exactly the kind she loved. Chin immediately pulled out a blade and slashed at the silk. Nothing. It didn't even leave a mark. Sherry let out a soft laugh. She said it was useless. Her spider silk was stronger than steel. Then she attacked. Sharp strikes slammed into Chin's body again and again, each hit heavier than the last. She stepped back, her patience gone. She said she couldn't hold back anymore. Then she declared she would pierce him full of holes, like a shower head. Chin didn't answer. He refused. Even now, he refused to give up. He tightened his grip on the blade and struggled harder against the silk. A sharp limb suddenly pierced straight through his forearm. Blood sprayed across the ground. Sherry's eyes widened, just for a second, because Chin didn't scream. He moved, in one brutal motion. He cut. The others stared in shock. They couldn't process what they just saw. He let himself get stabbed, just to cut off his own arm. Chin didn't stop. He ran. Sherry snapped out of it and ordered the two beastmen to stop staring and chase him. Chin was breathless. His legs felt like they were about to give out. He knew he couldn't keep going. He had lost too much blood. This was it. He was ready to accept the end. Then, he felt it again. That strange pull. Like something was calling him. A faint red glow flickered in the distance, and it locked onto his eyes. Behind him, one of the beastmen rushed forward, thinking he had finally caught him. But Chin didn't slow down. He jumped, straight off the cliff. The men skidded to a stop, staring down in the disbelief. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then one cursed and called him insane. A complete lunatic. Sherry's voice cut in, cold and sharp. Find him, dead or alive. Chin hit the ground hard. He coughed, struggling to breathe as his vision blurred. Still alive. Barely. Ahead of him through the haze, he saw something. A set of old, rusted gates. Half buried. Forgotten. Behind him, the group arrived not long after. They followed the trail of blood straight to the entrance. One of them muttered that Chin must have crawled inside. They looked around, confused. They didn't even know a place like this existed near the school. Sherry told him to shut up and move. They stepped through a Safaral horror. Thoral Rikai sees Deran first Kainer. Inside, the air changed, cold, heavy. They followed the blood trail deeper and deeper until it opened up into something massive. An abandoned research institute, broken walls, rusted structures, silence everywhere. Sherry suddenly looked up. There, Chin. His legs hung limply from above. They found him, but the moment they looked closer, everyone froze. Chin wasn't alone. In front of him was a dragon, massive, ancient. Its eyes locked onto Chin like it had been waiting for him. Sherry's voice trembled as she tried to speak. She couldn't process it. Then, in panic, she transformed and shouted, "A dragon!" That was a dragon. Impossible. They went extinct 20 years ago. Legendary divine beasts. Creatures that shouldn't exist anymore. But there it was, watching him, waiting. Chin, barely conscious, looked up at it and asked, "Was it the one calling him?" The dragon didn't answer. Instead, its energy moved. A deep, overwhelming force poured into Chin's body. Sherry's eyes widened in panic. She could feel it. He was about to transform, and if that happened, everything would change. She didn't hesitate. She ordered the attack. Kill him. Now. Sherry aimed an attack at Chin, but Garfield jumped in front of him and blocked it. She was struck and coughed up blood. She felt sorry for tricking Lin into coming to the study group. Sherry called her a brat and told her to stop getting in the way. But then, a blurry figure appeared in front of Sherry. It was Chin, and he quickly grabbed Garfield. Garfield looked at him in shock. Lin stood in his new form as he held the girl. I don't know how to accurately describe it, but our MC looked like a freaking monster now. His attack made Sherry scream that it burned. The others were shocked that Chin had turned into a dragon. They decided to run. Chin set Garfield down, assuring her it was okay and telling her to wait for him. In a flash, Chin appeared in the path of the two beastmen. He said one of them had slapped Garfield, so he slapped them back. One beastman nearly had his head roll from the force of Chin's slap. The other man panicked and claimed he did not slap Garfield. But Chin remembered that this man had hit his head, so he struck him. In the guy's vision, our MC was already upside down. Turns out the man's head flew off. Then Chin walked towards Sherry, who was still screaming that it burned. Desperate, she cried out and said she was wrong. She kept calling out Chin's name. Sherry reminded him that he'd always been peeking at her. She offered herself willingly and told him he could do whatever he wanted with her. Deep inside her web of lies, Sherry thought that no matter how strong he was, he's still a man. She believed he could not resist her seduction. The body he saw was only a shell she had shed. Sherry crawled as she planned her escape. As long as her real body escaped, Chin would still be in danger. Since the dragon was old, she planned to use 1,000,000 spiders to eat it. Then she imagined Chin turning into a loser with nothing. She did not plan on killing him right away. Then out of nowhere, Chin uttered, "I want you to become a slave, the lowliest slave." She was shocked and asked how he knew her thoughts. He stood before her. Then, he moved in a flash and caught her real body. He asked why she thought she could escape him this time. She let out a squeak. Suddenly, her face began to burst. She finally dropped dead. Chin quietly said he would not look again. He felt the power fading. His form returned to normal. Confused, he looked at the dragon and asked if it was because it was dying. The dragon released a burst of flames. Chin looked at it. Its body disappeared in the fire. A single red egg was left behind. Chin realized what it wanted to give him. He reached out his hands and held the egg. Early morning at the school dormitories. Garfield lay on a bed. Chin noticed that she was awake. She complained that her head and whole body hurt. She asked where they were. Chin told her they were in his dorm. Since no one was willing to live with him, she could stay for now. Garfield was shocked. She covered her body while yelling that she had treated him like a brother and asked if he had slept with her. Chin denied it with a straight face. Garfield recalled that Sherry had tried to kill her. Then, Chin had transformed into a dragon and saved her. She burst out laughing, unable to believe he could transform. She dismissed it as a dream. She grumbled that her head hurt and decided to go back to sleep. Chin decided that the baby dragon had to remain a secret. He could brush it off to Garfield. However, he changed his mind and decided he did not need to hide it from her. So, he told her it wasn't a dream. He revealed that he really had turned into a dragon. Skeptical, she asked if he was still dreaming. Chin explained that it was a one-time thing and that his current transformation ability was weak. He wanted to regain that power. He took out the red baby dragon and told her he wanted to raise it properly. Garfield was shocked. Chin watched her expression closely. Her expression shifted to excitement. She gushed about how cute it was and said she wanted to pet it. Chin noted that dragons had been extinct for decades. Many people would want it. So until it grew strong enough, they could not let anyone know it existed. Garfield told him to leave it to her since they were the strongest partners. They looked at the baby dragon, and Chin said they were like a family. Garfield teased him by asking which one of them was the dad. Chin stayed quiet. He then asked everything she knew about the study group. Meanwhile, in another setting. It was reported that Sherry had been missing for 3 days. On a phone screen, desperate messages appeared, checking on Sherry. He sent 1,387 messages over the next 3 days, but she didn't reply to a single one. Sherry also did not show up for their evening self-study. He added that he sang outside her dorm all night, yet she did not appear. He figured that something must have happened to her. He thought of a worst-case scenario, and that was that she found another man. He burst into tears and hugged Secretary Daishu. He asked what he should do. He claimed that he did not want to live without Sherry. Shu pushed him away while threatening to kill him, whose name is Chairman Kong Wei, if he dirtied his clothes. Shu investigated everything and found out that Sherry had recently taken a special interest in a male. He declared that he would investigate this man named Lin Chin himself. Back to our MC, the red baby dragon trembled. They panicked and asked what was wrong, wondering if it was in pain. Chin asked what they should do. At that moment, he found poop in his hand. Garfield laughed at him and said he was now a poop scooper. She teased him, saying he now had to adapt to a life stained with poop. In disbelief, Chin reminded her that they were family, so she better not run. The dragon cried again. They wondered what was wrong with it. Garfield said it might be hungry. She wondered what baby dragons even ate, while Chin shouted that raising a kid was too hard. If it was a matter of food, Chin thought of the school's logistics department. There was an uncle named Old Jiao who used to be a beast tamer. He figured the man should know what dragons eat. He told Garfield to stay in the dorm and take care of the dragon while he went to buy food. Upon arriving, Chin asked for Old Jiao. Muye, a general worker in the logistics department, said Old Jiao was probably drunk and told him to come to him if he needed anything. Muye had several dogs strapped to him and one in his arms. Chin observed him. After hearing him out, Muye explained that whether it was a bird or a reptile hatchling, a high-protein or meat-based diet was essential. Suddenly, he started grilling. He informed him that the logistics department also offered cooking services and encouraged him to try the flavor. Chin exclaimed that it melted in his mouth as he took a bite. Suddenly, Garfield and other people joined in and said the same. Chin was surprised. He asked why she was here. She replied that she was hungry. He told her he was going to bring some to her, and he reminded her that she was supposed to take care of the little dragon. She revealed that the dragon was in her bag. Chin warned that if the dragon was found, they would be done for. She replied that she knew. So he asked why she brought it with her. Again, she simply said that she was hungry. She told him to relax. She added that he could not keep it locked in the dorm, as it also needed fresh air. They looked at the dragon, and she remarked how happy it was while eating. Chin urged her to go back once they finished eating. He worried that they might get in trouble if they were seen. He knew that the dragon could not stay in the dorm forever, and that he needed to find a safer and more suitable place for it to grow. He also expected the study group to come again. They were very dangerous. Out of the blue, someone sniffed him. Chin was surprised. He checked who it was. Kong Wei's expression darkened as he said Chin had the scent of Sherry's perfume on him. This creep continued to sniff our MC, and he became certain that it really is Sherry's scent. Meanwhile, Garfield was shocked to see Chairman Kong Wei. Muyi turned toward them. He wore a strange expression on his face. Chin was shocked to see the chairman of the study group. This is his first time meeting him. Earlier, he had demanded that Garfield tell him everything she knew about the study group. Garfield said that Chairman Kong Wei was responsible for the disappearances of many students. She added that they grew stronger through the use of dietary supplements. She had heard that he was arrogant due to his powerful background. He was regarded as one of the strongest students in their year. His beast transformation wasn't physical, but mental. It allowed him a certain degree of control over his target. At present, Chin couldn't move, so he thought it was Wei's ability. The baby dragon saw his finger inside the bag, and it bit him. To his surprise, he could move again. He decided not to start a conflict and thought he needed to calm Wei first. He recalled Garfield's words, where she said that Wei was obsessed with Sherry. She said that if he found out Sherry was dead, no one would survive his wrath. She called him Sherry's mega simp. He asked if he was Chairman Kong Wei. He said he had heard Sherry mention him. Wei didn't look pleased that he had spoken with her. He asked what rank he was to dare call her name. Chin stated that he was in the same class as Sherry. He added that since he couldn't transform, he had asked Sherry to help him join the study group. He said Sherry had told him she needed the chairman's approval. Stunned, Wei asked if Sherry had really said that. Chin gave a thumbs up and claimed that Sherry actually mentioned Wei often. Wei broke down. He cried and said Sherry loved him. Overjoyed, Wei thanked Chin. He assumed Sherry had simply been too shy to confess. In his excitement, he immediately agreed to let Chin join the study group. He grabbed people nearby and shouted that Sherry loved him. He even invited them all to a future wedding banquet. Daishu watched from a distance. He noted how Lin used his contact with Sherry to explain the scent. He noticed how Chin naturally claimed close contact with Sherry to explain her scent on his body and used the chairman's brain-dead weakness to shift the focus of the conversation and remove suspicion. He noted that Chin was smart. The pair turned to look at him. Shu watched them. He introduced himself as the vice chairman and welcomed Chin into the study group. He reached out his hand. Chin shook it. He stared intently and asked if Chin really could not perform a beast transformation. Shu tightened his grip. Chin realized that Shu still suspected him. He couldn't use the power of beast transformation, but the force wasn't much of a threat to him, so he decided to pretend, letting out a pained cry. Earlier, Garfield had informed him that Kong Wei had a deputy, Dai Shu. His beast transformation was a kangaroo. This gave him exceptional arm strength, but basically, he was a super annoying guy. Also, he was a serious misophobe. A brown substance splattered where their hands met. Shu looked down and asked what it was. Chin explained that as a poop scooper, it was normal for him to have a little poop on his hands. Then, he toyed with Shu by saying that he got a little on his left cheek, then right cheek, forehead, and chin. Of course, this made Dai touch those spots, smearing filth in the process. Furious, Shu transformed into a muscular kangaroo and threw a devastating punch. Garfield grew worried for him when he was blasted away. Shu was annoyed that the little animal dared to play him. Garfield rushed to Chin's side. She panicked when she saw him coughing up blood. He whispered for her to extort him for medical fees. Confused, she asked why he was thinking about money when he needed a hospital. He told her to listen, so she followed. Garfield began to wail loudly for the crowd to hear, shouting that he was coughing up blood. She accused Dai Shu of being cruel and said he hit a poor guy who could not even transform. She called people to look at the injustice. Then she mentioned the medical bills, saying they were just two poor kids. She had gathered quite a crowd. Shu gritted his teeth in frustration. Finally, he threw a handful of bills into the air and told them to shut up. He told them to take it as medical fees as he walked away. Garfield picked up the cash and thanked him. Once she got the money, she urged Chin to head to the hospital. However, he revealed that he was fine. What he had spat out was actually just chili sauce he had swiped from a barbecue stall. He had to get money for the little dragon. Garfield couldn't believe it was all just an act. She said he should have told her sooner because he had scared her. He apologized and said that without her acting, they wouldn't have fooled that kangaroo. Garfield agreed that her acting was perfect. Chin took the hit earlier, but he was fine. Although his current strength couldn't compare to that night, his body had become stronger. He felt like his skin was now covered in a thin layer of dragon scales. He counted the money. Since the kangaroo guy was quite rich, she suggested dividing the cash. He set some aside for the dragon's food for the week, and another portion for teething sticks and toys. Garfield asked about the rest. Chin gave it to her, calling it her service fee. He told her to buy something she liked to eat. She beamed brightly. She counted the money as they walked away. Chin glanced at Shu's retreating figure. At the dormitories, Lin Chin thought about his next steps. He considered drafting a growth plan and thought that the food problem would be solved for now. However, he noted that he still needed a safer place and a beast tamer. He wondered where he could find someone he could trust. He also thought about giving the little dragon a name. Agumon? Kaido? Red Toothless? Our boy was then interrupted when suddenly Garfield called out to him. She said the little dragon felt hot. They used a thermometer, and it showed a fever of 40 degrees. It looked very uncomfortable. Garfield said the school had a medical department, but that would expose the little dragon. Chin decided to find a way to lower the temperature himself. He used wet cloths and cooling patches. He even tried human medicine. Despite his efforts, the fever kept rising. To their shock, it went over 60 degrees. Garfield said that at this temperature, ordinary creatures would have already burned to death. Chin held the dragon as he wondered what he should do. That night, Chin decided to find a doctor. Garfield asked if he really didn't need her to go with him. He refused, saying more people would attract attention, and it was better if he went alone. He planned to wait a bit longer until fewer people were around at the emergency room. As Chin left the dormitories, someone watched from a distance. It was Dai Shu. He noticed Chin's bag was the same one and grew suspicious of it. At the medical department, a small corgi in a wheelchair barked as it exercised. It ran toward the female doctor. She picked it up and praised it. She said it had done well with its rehabilitation. Two older doctors called her Fan Fan. They approached and asked why she wasted money on a disabled local dog. They said it was for her own good and even offered her a discount on better breeds. Fan Fan turned away and thought that middle-aged people didn't understand anything. They were offended. To them, she treated kindness like trash. They had even heard that she had low emotional intelligence. One added that Fan Fan had no friends and that her parents had died early too. The other told him to stay away from her. Meanwhile, Chin sneaked in wearing a cap and a mask. Other patients complained as they left. They said the doctor looked gloomy and charged too much. They called her a quack. They labeled her a quack and suggested filing a complaint against her. Inside her office, Fan Fan sighed and muttered that she probably would not have any patients today. She thought that she was not suited to be a doctor. At that moment, someone opened the door. He saw that she looked dispirited. She noticed him by the door. He asked if he could ask a presumptuous question. He said the dog seemed important to her and asked why. Fan Fan was alarmed and asked if he was a voyeur. She crossed her arms and said she did not need to tell him that Ruby had grown up with her and was her only family. She added that she would not talk about how Ruby lost her legs protecting her, nor would she say that her dream was to cure Ruby. However, her confidence quickly crumbled. She said it was a pity that she was a distrusted doctor. She said she could not get patients or practical experience and called herself trash. Chin thought that she had already revealed everything. He thought it over and decided that she was worth a try. He told her that his pet beast was also sick, but asked if she could keep it a secret. She said that there were many complex relationships between humans and beasts. She assured him that a qualified doctor would respect that. She gave her word that she would keep it a secret. She misunderstood something, so Chin told her it was not what she thought. As he opened the bag, he explained that the beast had also saved his life. He showed the small red dragon and said its fever was nearing 70 degrees. Chin begged her to save the dragon. He begged her to save him. Fan Fan stood frozen in shock. Her eyes widened as she looked at the dragon in his arms. This made her think again. She quickly admitted that she didn't have any experience treating dragons, as they had gone extinct and were never taught in her classes. Then, she said, the library might have old records and that she would check immediately. Chin stayed silent. This made her say that he could come with her if he was worried. Chin thought this was a good chance to test if she was trustworthy. At the same time, he also thought he could deal with that kangaroo who had been following him from the dorms. He replied that he would wait there and told her he was counting on her. She didn't expect that. She left with Ruby. As she walked outside, she exclaimed that it was a dragon. She said that the world was still full of endless possibilities. Ruby responded with an excited bark. Suddenly, Shu appeared before them. Confused, Fan Fan continued on her way. As she tried to pass, he stepped in and blatantly blocked her path. She thought his behavior could count as sexual harassment. Shu demanded to know what Chin had put in his bag. Apparently, he realized that when he attacked Chin earlier, a normal person would have used the bag as a shield. Instead, Chin protected it and stayed cautious afterward, even though it looked dirty. So he believed there must be something inside, possibly related to Sherry's disappearance. He was very concerned. He demanded again that she tell him what was in the bag. It was a matter between doctor and patient, so she refused to say anything. Then, Shu casually shared a fact about a kangaroo's arm. Its strength was 6 to 10 times stronger than a human's, and beast transformation would double it again. He squeezed her shoulder as he demanded that she speak. She cried out in pain. Fan Fan winced and called him a dumbass. She refused to say anything. Shu tightened his grip and asked if she had changed her mind. Suddenly, Ruby barked and rushed forward. Shu blocked Ruby's path, pinning the dog in place. Fan Fan panicked. Seeing how important the dog was to her, he used that to pressure her to speak. He asked again if she would tell the truth, keeping Ruby restrained. Ruby whimpered, and Fan Fan grew frantic. Then, he suddenly noticed a rock flying toward him. He stepped back as it struck near his leg, forcing him to let Ruby go. He was amused that Chin had finally stopped hiding. Chin stood in front of Fan Fan as she held Ruby. He apologized for dragging her into this. She replied that he was just seeing a doctor and told him not to blame himself just because someone else was a jerk. He pointed out that she could have just told the man what he wanted to avoid trouble. She reminded him that he was the one who made her promise to keep it a secret. Chin thanked her. He told her to continue looking for information since the temperature had already exceeded 70 degrees, and he was very worried. She agreed and ran off. Enraged, Shu threw a punch while asking who allowed her to leave. Chin blocked the attack with his arms. The force left his arms steaming. Shu transformed into a kangaroo. Now, he had confirmed that Chin could actually use beast transformation and had just been pretending before. He said no normal person could block his fist. He punched him again, and Chin still blocked it with his arms. Shu said he could throw punches at the same spot, stacking the power. In time, it would break Chin's defense. Shu threw a flurry of punches, but this time Chin evaded. As he kept attacking, Chin said he was an idiot for thinking he only knew how to defend. Our boy landed a hit. In his mind, he noted that Shu relied too much on beast transformation and that his basic skills were weak. With that, he believed he could win. The little dragon in the backpack growled. Steam started leaking out of the bag. Shu noticed it and confirmed that Chin was hiding something. He thought it was a chimera and demanded that Chin hand it over. Chin realized the little dragon was reaching its limit. He decided he had no time to waste on the kangaroo and needed to lure him somewhere without people and end the fight quickly. Shu asked if he really thought he could escape. As he chased Chin, he called Chairman Kong Wei and reported that Chin was hiding something. He added that there was a high chance it was a hybrid beast, and that Sherry was likely already murdered. He planned to follow Chin and told him to come quickly and bring Dash. Wei was displeased. A large, dog-like dark beast stood behind him. Suddenly, he saw Muya again, and told him to move because he was in a hurry. Muya demanded that he give Dash back to him. It seems like this big black dog wasn't in its sane mind right now. Anyway, back to Chin. He kept running, but suddenly stopped. The little dragon looked extremely hot. He could tell that its temperature had gone over 100 degrees. Even its breathing felt like burning air. Inside the reference room, Fan searched through the shelves. She couldn't find anything about dragons. She accidentally bumped into a silver-haired girl wearing a black cap and mask. The girl dropped a book. Fan tried to tell her about it, but the girl simply walked away. She was left confused, until she noticed the book had a fire-breathing dragon on the cover. Meanwhile, the steam coming out of Chin's bag grew stronger. Fan flipped through the pages and realized it was a handwritten notebook. She found what she was looking for. Meanwhile, Chin had a suspicion about what was happening. The bag grew hotter. Shu continued to chase after him, telling him to obediently die since he could not run anymore. Chin did not answer and opened the bag. Fan read that young dragons would experience a sudden rise in temperature around the full moon. Their body temperature could exceed 150 degrees because their internal glands were developing. At the same time, Shu hurled his fist and shouted for Chin to die. In a quick move, Chin threw the backpack at Shu, hitting his shoulder. Shu opened the bag only to find that it was completely empty. Suddenly, what he saw next confused him. A low growl echoed from a small red dragon perched on Chin's shoulder. It looked ferocious. Shu's eyes reflected the intensity of the dragon. It opened its mouth. Fan read that dragons needed to periodically release the energy built up inside their bodies. Chin told Shu to say hello. Shu panicked. He asked what it was. The dragon unleashed a powerful breath of fire that struck Shu. He screamed as the flames engulfed him. He was too loud. After the blast faded, the little dragon looked satisfied. Shu, badly burned, begged for his life. He promised to keep the dragon a secret. Chin replied that only dead people keep secrets. Shu said that if he died, the security department would investigate and take the dragon. Chin said that if that happened, he would kill them all. Outside the medical department, Fan looked for Chin. He walked up to her. She informed him about what she found. But Chin said the fever had already gone down. Fan collapsed in relief and said that it was great. Chin told her that the kangaroo would not cause her any trouble anymore, but the problem wasn't fully solved yet. He planned to use this time to prepare. He thanked her. Then he asked if she could become the dragon's private doctor. This surprised her, but she said she couldn't do it since she believed she was not trusted and not qualified to treat a dragon. Chin told her she was the best doctor he had ever seen. Fan stared at him, wide-eyed and stunned by his words. Then, she said she had found something in the reference room. A girl dropped it, and she couldn't catch up to her, so she brought it to give to him. Chin was surprised to see that it was a handwritten notebook about raising dragons. He looked closely at the drawing on the cover, and noticed 3 petal marks at the bottom. Meanwhile, Muya was on the ground. He still demanded that Wei give Dash back. Wei said that lower-class people were so annoying. He claimed that the creature had long been his dog and ordered Dash to eat Muya. Dash moved toward Muya, opening its maw. At that moment, old Jiao from the logistics department arrived. The man looked drunk. He called out to Chairman Wei, asking him to spare the boy's cheap life for his sake, noting that lower-class people simply didn't know better. Mui was surprised to see him. The next morning, Fan said the dragon was growing too fast and that the study group was searching for Chin, so he could no longer stay in the dorm. She offered him a temporary place to stay. She led the way. Garfield was excited about it. They arrived at what Fan called a secret base. It was an abandoned old campus. At the secluded campus nestled among lush greenery, Garfield said the entire study group was searching for Chin. She suggested that he raise the dragon outside first, then come back later for revenge. Chin disagreed. He explained that the school had logistics and medical support, which the dragon might need at any time. He said the outside world was more dangerous, especially while carrying a dragon. More importantly, his main target was still inside the school. He also said that both he and the little dragon needed real combat experience to grow. Plus, their location was far enough from the main campus, making it the most suitable place for them. He went inside and opened a window in the abandoned classroom. The dust made him cough. This made him wonder how long the place had been unused. He looked at the little dragon and said they had a lot of cleaning to do, asking if it was ready. But the dragon just played around. He decided to let it be as long as it was happy. It was time for them to start. He grabbed the mop, and the little dragon rode it while he cleaned the floor at full speed. After a short while, they happily played hide-and-seek together. Then, he cheered, saying they were number one. Garfield and Fan arrived carrying supplies. Garfield announced they were back, while Fan asked how the cleaning went. They saw the messy classroom and realized they had to help with the cleaning. Chin suggested letting the little dragon and Ruby play outside first. He then asked if they had been followed. Garfield dismissed it right away, saying it was impossible because she was the king of stealth. After cleaning, it was time to eat. Garfield proudly presented the food she made and called herself the queen of cooking. She took a bite, then immediately reacted to how bad it tasted. She cried out, saying she had spent the whole afternoon making it. Fan told her there should not be a next time. Chin told her it was not that bad, and that there was a sweet aftertaste if he chewed carefully. This made her perk up, so she tried again, but it was still bad. He told her that she had to chew 49 times. Garfield said she did not need pity, and that she would finish the food herself. Chin told her to save some for him since the dragon liked it too. Fan watched the two of them interact with a blank expression, wondering if they were just showing off their affection. She looked down at Ruby and jokingly suggested that they should just get rid of them. Meanwhile, at Chin's dormitory, a student rushed in and reported to Wei that there was still no news about Shu. He also said Chin had been missing and had skipped class for 2 weeks. Wei said that the woman he loved most had been taken from him. He added that the person he trusted most was also gone. He wanted revenge for love. He then asked teacher Bao for permission. The teacher was drawing monsters in his notebook. He asked if Wei was sure Chin was hiding a hybrid beast. Wei said yes, and insisted Dai Shu would not lie. A chilling smile spread across teacher Bao's face, and he told Wei to do his best to find it. Wei wiped away his tears and said he understood. He vowed that he would find the target, even if he had to dig 3 feet into the ground. Back to our MC. Chin sat under a tree and threw a ball, telling the dragon to fetch it. While the dragon chased it, Chin read the notebook. It said dragons usually start learning to fly at 2 months under a beast tamer. Chin realized he still needed one. He looked forward to flying. Suddenly, the dragon cried out. Chin ran over in panic. To his surprise, a large rat appeared. He glared at it. This looked like a Pokemon battle at this point. But then, our boy threw a rock, blasting a massive hole through its head. He noticed the rat was unusually large. He sensed more were coming. Elsewhere, a girl saw a group of glowing-eyed rats and screamed. Chin realized those rats were being controlled. The rats were spread out, so he knew the person controlling them wanted to fight. He suspected the study group was behind the chaos. It was no wonder so many people had gone missing at the school recently. Those who saw the rats decided to pretend they hadn't seen anything. Later that night, we see Muye looked serious. He called out to Old Jiao. Old Jiao, drunk and holding a bottle, asked where Muye was going again. He reminded him that last time, he had to swallow his pride just to save him. He pointed out that he raised him to live, not to watch him throw his life away again and again. Muye shouted that he had to go and take Dash back. Old Jiao snapped that it was just a beast. Muye argued that Dash was not just a beast. It was the first pet beast he had ever tamed. Old Jiao scoffed and called him an idiot. He said Muye was still acting like a kid and threatened to break his leg so he could not leave. Muye grew cautious. Old Jiao asked if he remembered the feeling of being beaten by him. He sneered that Muya was still too weak, but he was cut off by a sudden drunken hiccup. Old Jiao lost his balance and collapsed on the ground. Muya cursed the damn drunkard. Later that night, Garfield announced some bad news. Since Chin had stopped going to class, she had become the last student. Because of that, she decided to skip class 2 and said she would stay there for the night. Chin crossed his arms and refused. He told her to go back because the place could turn into a battlefield at any time. Garfield ignored him. She sat on the bed and started reading a bedtime story to the little dragon. He shouted at her to go back at once. She yawned and said goodnight, saying she was sleepy, even though it was only 7, and she was already in his bed. He tried to take back his blanket, and the two ended up fighting over it. Fan Fan watched from outside and giggled. That made them notice her. Then she said she would just come back after 10 minutes. They both shouted, "Hey!" She muttered that being young was great. Chin and Garfield shouted back together that she misunderstood. She casually explained that sexual intercourse could increase the beast transformation rate. She said there were thousands of ways to transform, but the core principle was building a connection between species. She added that many people improve their cultivation that way. Chin became flustered and told her to stop saying things like that. Fan Fan then took out a camera and asked if she could record them for research. He called her a pervert. She kept going, saying it would be like a summer night dormitory film for 3 people. Chin told them both to stop talking nonsense and go back. Despite his protests, the 3 ended up sharing the space. Chin lay awake, thinking that the situation was more troublesome than he expected. He eventually fell asleep. In the middle of the night, a bell rang. Chin's eyes snapped open. He sat up abruptly. He looked around and noticed Garfield was gone. Garfield got up. She had drunk so much water that she needed to use the restroom. She walked along the dark corridor, not noticing anything unusual, until a scratching sound made her look up. Chin ran into the hallway and shouted for her to watch out. Garfield turned around. A black mouse with glowing red eyes jumped out. She teased Chin, saying it was just a mouse. Suddenly, a massive wave of mice burst through the walls and floors. Their sheer numbers made the walls crack. Wei released the swarm, and Chin and Garfield watched as the mice poured out. Screams echoed throughout the building. The rodents crawled over everything, and it was disgusting. Garfield threw up, and Chin called her a brain-dead idiot. She snapped back, saying she would never forgive the person responsible. Chin reminded her that she was a cat and told her to hurry up and catch the mice. Chin called out to the little dragon as he tried to reach it. The dragon flew into the air. Chin was shocked that it could fly. The roof began to cave in, and some mice fell onto the little dragon's head. Chin froze as he watched it happen. There were too many rats and they couldn't get past. The little dragon was being overwhelmed by the mice. Chin thought about using that move. He hesitated since it could only be used once, and this was not the right time. Suddenly, he told the dragon not to be so delicate, because they were just a bunch of rats. He encouraged it, saying its teeth were more numerous than theirs and its claws were sharper. He declared that it was the master of 10,000 beasts. This made the little dragon realize something. It let out a loud roar. The mice immediately backed away from it. They saw the chance to pass through, and eventually, they reached the little dragon. Chin held the dragon and praised it, saying it did well. Not long after, the rats started gathering again. Chin pointed out a crack and told them to climb to the 3rd floor. They climbed up, and eventually got to safety. Garfield swore she would take 100 baths after this, but she realized they had forgotten Fan Fan. They peered back down and yelled her name, asking if she was still alive. Fan Fan screamed loudly. A trembling hand gripped a piece of fabric, struggling to hold on. Fan Fan shouted back that she was still alive, but might not last much longer. She was hanging from the ceiling while rats gathered below. Garfield just prayed and said Fan Fan was a good doctor. This girl really thought that Dr. Fan was done for. Chin scolded her. Since Garfield was fast, he told her to escape and get help while he went to save Fan Fan. He planned to settle the study group problem this time. Chin warned her not to go to the security department. Instead, he told her to go straight to the Supreme Council. With a determined look, Garfield declared that she would do it for the little dragon. From the window, she jumped out and moved through the trees. Since Garfield wasn't the target, he knew she would be safe once she left the area. He told the little dragon to rest and leave everything to him now since it had already done well that night. Downstairs was full of rats, so he wondered how close he could get to Fan Fan. He could only go down first and take it one step at a time. Chin sprinted down the long, dark hallway. Unexpectedly, something moved really fast. It was Dash. Chin dodged immediately. He saw that it was such a big dog that it blocked the hallway. Dash drooled as it watched him, and in an instant, it charged toward Chin. Chin thought of an idea on how to get close to Fan Fan. He leapt into the air and noticed that the floor was already weighed down by the rats and had become extremely fragile, and this charging beast arrived at the perfect time. In our MC's mind, he thought, Doggy takes the credit. Then, he landed on Dash and forced him down. This caused the floors to collapse across several levels. The rats swarmed toward Dash, and the beasts began fighting each other. Nearby, Fan Fan struggled as her hand was tangled. Chin called out to her and said he was there. Suddenly, Wei appeared. Dashe stopped fighting. At the same time, Muye shouted at Dashe, telling it to wake up. Chin recognized him as the meat seller from the logistics department. He remarked that too many characters were showing up all at once. He told Fan Fan that it might actually be safer for her to hang there a little longer. Fan Fan was shocked. Ruby whimpered. Just a little flashback. A young Muye had a swollen face. Old Jiao told the parents that the kids didn't know any better and were just playing. The mother snapped back, asking who was playing when her son was injured. Jiao quickly explained that Muye had no mother to teach him since he was young. He begged them to be the bigger people and forgive him. Muye shouted that the others started it by calling his parents lower class and comparing them to livestock. That was why he hit them. He shouted back that they were lower class instead. Those people began to transform, which scared him. Jiao immediately slapped Muye and called him a punk. He dropped to his knees and apologized, promising to teach the boy a proper lesson. Muye asked why he was kneeling. The beast told him to get lost. A dark limb suddenly grabbed Muye by the face. The creature said that this place belonged only to beastmen, and those who couldn't use beast transformation existed only to serve them. So it was only right to say they were no different from cats and dogs. Muye was ordered to be locked in a dog cage so he would learn his place. He shouted, demanding to be let out. As he sat in the shadows, dozens of glowing red eyes appeared from the darkness. It was a group of dogs. A small black puppy approached him and dropped a green toy in front of him. It wanted to play with him. At that moment, Muye decided to prove something. That even if he couldn't use beast transformation, he still had dignity. At present, he held the same toy. The black puppy, Dash, now fully grown, recognized it. Back in the cage, they had played together a lot, until Wei saw them. Seeing that the dog wasn't bad, the young Wei claimed the puppy for himself. The young Muye protested. Wei found the puppy cute. He painted a bone on their fur and challenged them to see which one would eat the bone first. In the present, Muye stood firm, holding the green toy bone. Dash lunged at him. Fortunately, he was pulled back. It was Chin. He asked Muye if he planned to defeat the enemy just by talking. He reminded him that in their school, where eating people could be easily covered up, only fists and teeth mattered. Chin said he knew their weakness. The people from the study group relied too much on beast transformation. Wei told him he was getting carried away and that Chin was expelled from the study group. Chin replied that it was a pity. Then he asked who the study group's instructor was. He said it was impossible for them to hide something like food supplementation to grow stronger without backing. Wei asked if Chin thought he was qualified to know. Chin answered that he would just ask again after beating Wei into submission. He bit his hand. He realized that he had formed a connection with the dragon, and that the little dragon's growth directly affected his abilities. The last time, when the dragon had a high fever and breathed fire, his body had mirrored that power. Although it was a one-time use, it was enough. Suddenly, a voice shouted, "Rainstorm!" Projectiles blasted through the walls and windows. As the spikes pierced through everything, someone shouted a warning to watch out. But the spikes had already struck Chin before Mui could help him. 5 minutes earlier, Garfield leapt through the trees. She suddenly stopped. When she saw a silhouette, she called out that something terrible had happened and urged him to notify the Supreme Council. To her surprise, it was a teacher. She felt relieved. Bao Bao smiled and said he was already heading there. She was surprised. From afar, the silhouettes of students inside the building could be seen. Bao Bao focused his gaze and spotted Chin with the bag. He grew curious about what kind of hybrid beast was inside. He called out, "Rainstorm!" and spikes shot toward the building. Back to the present time, Chin was hit. The attack tore through the wall. Wei was glad to see Bao Bao, as he didn't expect him to step in personally. Bao Bao, now transformed into a bee, said it was good to be young. He remarked that risking one's life for a companion was moving. Chin was shocked that he was a teacher. He identified him as an insect-type beastman. Bao Bao asked if the hybrid beast was inside Chin's bag. Chin questioned why a teacher would support the study group. He asked if Bao Bao wasn't afraid of being investigated. Bao Bao told him not to be naive. He pointed out that the school's philosophy was to abandon human form and return to the way of the beast. He asked if Chin really believed the higher-ups cared if a few weaklings were devoured. People only praised the majesty of the lion. Chin stayed silent. Bao Bao continued, saying that through devouring, the lion could gain the rabbit's alertness, the antelope's agility, and the fox's cunning. He said their esophagus represented the truth of the world. He claimed it was what gave birth to Cerberus, the cockatrice, Cthulhu, and the most true and beautiful creatures. He said he had seen it with his own eyes, a creature at the absolute peak of hybrid beasts. With just one glance, he knew it represented the truth of the universe. This made him ecstatic. He clarified to Chin that he wasn't targeting him personally. It was just that Chin was too lowly and weak, unworthy of possessing a hybrid beast. He told Chin to hand it over and promised him a quick death. Chin told him to eat shit. Bao Bao replied that he had many ways to punish bad students. He warned that his stinger carried deadly poison and claimed Chin was already dead. The toxin began spreading through Chin's body. Chin realized it was a neurotoxin and muttered that insect types were such a pain. He had no choice. His body began to heat up. Bao Bao noticed the changes in his body. Our boy is starting to transform. Muye shouted that he was burning. Fan Fan was surprised to learn that the toxin was breaking down under high temperature. Wei warned him not to attempt a transformation and ordered Dash to tear him apart immediately. Dash lunged forward with a roar. But then, Chin's arms ignited with flames as he forced open Dash's mouth. The dog froze. He apologized to the big dog as he activated his dragon flame mode. He lifted the dog. His body's cells became extremely active under the effects of the dragon flame. He estimated that his physical abilities had increased dozens of times over. However, he could only maintain this state for a short time. He slammed Dash into the ground. Everyone watched in shock. Chin calculated that he had about 45 seconds left. He told Mui he couldn't help him, so he had to handle things on his own. Mui said he understood, and without wasting a second, Chin lunged at Bao Bao. The swarm of rats surged forward at Wei's command. Mui slashed through them. Fan Fan explained that true beast transformation required forming a connection with animals, but Wei's ability was closer to mind control. She realized he used fear and abuse to dominate them. She shouted that if his focus was broken, the big dog could regain its senses. She added that Chin was right, and that Muye should attack him directly because he was personally weak. Muye asked how he was supposed to break his focus. Nearby, Wei kicked Dash to wake it up. Muye saw him. Wei raised his fist and lashed out. Muye shouted for him to stop. He rushed forward, cursing at him. He yelled for Dash to open its eyes. But then, Dash lunged and slammed Muye into the wall. Blood splattered as the beast bit into him, his teary eyes reflected in the dog's gaze. Wei asked how it felt to be bitten to death by the dog he had raised. Muya hit the fan switch. The fan turned on. It spun while Fan Fan was still hanging from it. She realized this was bad. The cloth snapped. She and Ruby were thrown forward. Ruby landed right on Wei's face and soaked him with pee. Everyone froze in shock. And since Wei had lost his focus, Dash regained its senses. Enraged, Wei grabbed Ruby roughly, shouting insults as he lost his temper. He lashed out in anger, but the chaos only grew around him as he yelled. Fan Fan cried out in horror. Mui asked where his focus had gone. Before Wei could react, Mui threw the green toy bone. It struck Wei square in the forehead. He told him to go fetch it. Dash instinctively followed its real master's command. The big black beast lunged forward and caught the toy bone. Wei's eyes widened in shock. In an instant, he was struck down. Mui let out a cold laugh. Dash stood nearby, the toy bone still clamped in its mouth. Not far away, Ruby lay still, exhausted from everything that had happened. Fan Fan crawled toward her. Meanwhile, Bao Bao flew outside the classroom. Chin had 44 seconds left. Bao Bao stared at him with excitement and asked if it was a fire-type fusion beast. He began listing possibilities, wondering if it was a huadu, a firebird, a lava rat, or something else. Sharp stingers rained down. Chin dodged the spikes as they slammed into the ground around him. At 41 seconds, he rushed forward and attacked. Little did he know, the little red dragon fell from his grasp. He leaped up, his arm burning with orange heat, and reached for it. But at the same time, Bao Bao stepped back while raining spikes on him. Chin's hands were struck by several spikes. Bao Bao felt confident because he finally got the bag. But that turned to shock when he was suddenly hit from behind. Chin slashed one of his stinger arms. At 35 seconds, Chin grabbed him and threw him with full force. Bao Bao crashed to the ground hard. A student nearby was caught in the chaos. Bao Bao's stinger pierced the student, and he flung the body toward Qin. Qin spun his arms in a circular motion as flames ignited at his fingertips. He lunged at Bao Bao, and they clashed mid-air. Qin punched him while enduring multiple stinger strikes. At the 24-second mark, Qin grabbed one of Bao Bao's wings. Then Bao Bao opened his mouth, trying to strike him with a spiked tongue. At 21 seconds, the stinger from his mouth pierced Qin's chest. Qin grabbed the tongue and swung Bao Bao in a wide arc. He released him and slammed him into the ground with overwhelming force, cracking the earth. Then he pinned him down. His arm burned even brighter as he brought it in front of Bao Bao's face. A massive explosion followed. Our boy just spent all of his 13 seconds incinerating Bao Bao. Then the countdown ended. Qin reverted to his human form. Bao Bao's body was charred. Qin breathed heavily. He thought it was finally over. But Bao Bao's mouth remained open. Suddenly, his tongue shot out to pierce Qin. Fortunately, Qin managed to pull back in time. Bao Bao forced himself up and created distance between them. He muttered that he had almost died. He couldn't believe he had lost to a student. His curiosity about the hybrid beast only grew stronger. Qin couldn't believe Bao Bao was still alive after that attack. At this point, his dragon flame was completely depleted. But Bao Bao didn't know that. Qin thought quickly. Bao Bao believed Qin had already won, and he was clearly obsessed with hybrid beasts. Given that, Qin had to decide his next move fast. But then, Bao Bao said he only had one request. He demanded to see the hybrid beast that defeated him. Qin was stunned. It was as if planned. The bag that holds the little dragon fell from the branch. The little dragon peeked out. Qin froze. He knew it would really be a big problem. At the same time, Bao Bao was left speechless when he saw the dragon. Bao Bao asked what it was. He trembled as he realized it was a dragon. It stood at the apex of all beasts, one of the 4 symbols on par with the legendary Xuanwu. Then he corrected himself, saying this was an existence even nobler than Xuanwu. He screamed in awe, recognizing it as a young dragon that had only recently hatched. He dropped to his knees and said it was wonderful. Qin asked if he had any last words. Bao Bao begged to touch the dragon and said that after that, he would be willing to die. Of course, Qin had no reason to believe him. Bao Bao opened his mouth wide and revealed his long tongue, his lifeline. He explained that he was a parasitic wasp and that all his abilities depended on this specific mouth part. If it were destroyed, he would die. He offered it willingly and said he was ready to submit completely to the dragon. Qin didn't hesitate to grab it. Bao Bao screamed in agony. Qin realized Bao Bao wasn't lying. He could kill him, and the earlier battle had already proven it. Qin frowned slightly because it was disgusting. Then he told Bao Bao he couldn't grant his dying wish. He asked if Bao Bao had killed a cat girl earlier. Bao Bao quickly denied it. He said she was too weak to interest him. So he had only knocked her unconscious. Turns out it was true. Qin hadn't expected that, so he demanded to be taken to her immediately. Back on the old campus, Fan Fan kept calling out to Ruby. The disturbance at the old campus lasted less than 15 minutes, just as Qin had hoped, and it didn't cause a large-scale commotion. Garfield was safe. Her weakness allowed her to escape the disaster. Qin decided to take a risk in how he handled Bao Bao. If a teacher died, it would draw too much attention and increase the risk of exposing the dragon. Second, Bao Bao was willing to take the blame for the multiple deaths caused by the study group led by Wei. He would report everything to the higher-ups while hiding the dragon's existence. Because of that, Qin decided to spare him, and they reached an agreement. 3 days later, Qin, Garfield, and Muye arrived at the medical facility. Fan Fan greeted them. Qin immediately asked how Ruby was doing. Ruby lay on a bed, connected to several machines. Fan Fan said she was still not out of danger and could only be kept alive by the machines. She explained that Ruby needed better treatment, but the school would not request help from the research institute for an ordinary dog. Still, she believed Ruby would survive, because she would save her, no matter what. The 3 of them fell silent. Their visit came to an end. Garfield asked if there was really nothing they could do. Qin turned and asked if they had any money he could borrow. He said he would pay them back. He looked at his hand and saw only 2 small coins. He was too poor. Even so, he went to the reception desk and asked the nurse to add it to Ruby's treatment fee. The nurse stared at the tiny amount. Qin realized that everyone was broke, and Fan Fan was likely not much better off. He knew that Ruby's treatment and raising a dragon were both incredibly expensive, and he realized he had to find a way to make more money. After that, Qin entrusted the little dragon to Garfield for about an hour. She asked where he was going, but he didn't answer and left. He took the elevator down. The doors opened to a dim basement. A woman welcomed him. Other doctors were inside, monitoring vital signs. He told them he was ready. A voice ordered them to begin the blood transfusion. Chin lay on the table as tubes were connected to his arms. He said he had gained some confidence and that he would become the strongest. As the transfusion began, he softly called out to his dad. Later, the group arrived at a secluded training spot. The mountain blocked the view, and the clearing was perfect for training. They noted that the stone walls could hide them, and there was even an escape route through water. They agreed that the place Bao Bao gave them was good. Garfield thought he was a saint. Chin muttered that he was just a pervert. Muye looked around and said the school was ridiculously big. Then, he turned to Chin and said he would repay him for saving him and Dash. He said he would use everything he knew to train Chin's pet beast. He asked what the beast was. The little dragon revealed itself. Of course, Muye was shocked. He composed himself and said he wouldn't treat it differently just because it was a dragon. Funnily enough, he changed into a ringleader outfit. Chin yelled that the outfit wasn't necessary. Muye ignored him and asked if Chin wanted to train its flying ability. From what he heard, the little dragon only flew that night because of an emergency, so it didn't count as mastering the skill. He explained that most creatures naturally avoid flying because it consumes a lot of stamina and requires patient guidance. Before attempting that, he suggested Chin first build a more basic connection with the dragon. His first goal was to make the little dragon respond to Chin's whistle. When Chin asked how to do that, Mui told him to blow a whistle in a specific rhythm every time he fed it. After enough repetition, the dragon would respond even without food. Then they would increase the distance step by step, starting at 100 meters and pushing to 300, 500, and eventually 1,000 meters. Chin began whistling and ran into the forest. Muye shouted for him to go farther. The little dragon chirped and followed the sound. Muye urged them to keep going further and further. A few hours later, Garfield suddenly shouted, asking if they were ever going to eat. Back in class, Chin slept at his desk, drooling. The teacher called his name angrily and asked if the class was that boring. He scolded Chin for skipping a month and then sleeping on his first day back. He told him to stand. Chin stood up and apologized. He said training had been too tiring. The teacher mocked him and asked what a dead last was even training for. The class burst into laughter. The teacher ignored them and told Chin to define beast transformation. He warned there would be consequences if he failed. Chin scratched his head. After hiding for over a month, the little dragon now had a relatively stable place to live. To avoid being expelled for skipping too many classes, he had to show up occasionally. Because of his dad, he wouldn't leave the school and he had to become the strongest. He answered that beast transformation was based on the connection between humans and beasts. He explained it involved both emotional and genetic links to gain power. He noted to himself that once a person gained a specific type of beast transformation, they could not acquire abilities from other species. He added that a month ago, this was just a dream, but now he could finally see hope. He admitted that while transformation improved through personal training, there were still many unknowns. He realized he could not keep hiding. He needed money for Ruby's treatment and the little dragon's milk. The teacher and the students were stunned, realizing that Chin's answer was completely correct. Chin continued, saying that when the beast transformation rate reached 50% before, he was suddenly cut off. The students panicked, thinking it was an earthquake. They saw someone walking past outside. Students in the hallway pointed at a golden badge. They said it was from the elite campus. One student, mocked as a country bumpkin, explained that in their campus, the beast transformation rate rarely exceeded 15%. They were in the lowest tier campus, while above them was a completely different world, the elite campus. It was filled with monsters who had transformation rates above 50%. They wondered why someone from there would come here. Then the classroom door opened. A student named Cao Meng walked in, followed by an old man. He announced that he needed 3 pieces of prey. The teacher was surprised to see a student from the elite campus. The others immediately began whispering in shock, recognizing him as Cao Meng, the youngest record holder with a beast transformation rate of over 50%. Chin turned pale when he saw the badge. The teacher grew nervous, sweating as he asked Meng what brought him there. Meng said he needed 3 prey for a proficiency test. The class reacted in fear. They realized he was referring to the hunting game, a brutal evaluation that simulated beast-like hunting. Students whispered that it was a test used in the elite campus where participants were treated as expendable targets. Some never came back intact, while others died during the process, all for a test. Meng stated that second-class citizens like them were basically consumables. The students were stunned by how openly he disregarded their lives and how he didn't treat them as human at all. His butler leaned in and quietly reminded him not to say that. Mung casually told the class to pretend they hadn't heard anything. He then offered a bonus to the lucky ones chosen, around 200,000, as if buying their lives. His butler again warned him not to say such things. The classroom grew tense and resentful, thinking it had gone too far. Chin, however, saw it as a chance to make money, but decided it wasn't worth the risk for now. Suddenly, a student slammed his desk and shouted that the situation was ridiculous. He questioned the right to use students as entertainment and said such a rule should have been abolished long ago. Before he could finish, Mung's butler moved behind him and struck him with a claw, causing the student to collapse. The butler calmly apologized to the teacher, saying he had only helped maintain classroom discipline. The teacher quickly said he would cooperate. The rest of the class fell silent, realizing the gap in power was overwhelming. Mung clapped his hands and began selecting the prey. He pointed at a large student, a crocodile, then a pangolin, and a girl with a skunk transformation. The chosen students froze in shock. Then the crocodile suddenly raised his hand and claimed he knew someone more suitable. He pointed straight at Chin, saying he was the perfect prey. Mung shrugged and said adding one more made no difference. The crocodile laughed. The teacher quickly ordered all selected students to follow Mung. Before leaving, Chin raised his hand. He said he had a question. He confirmed that in this test they were the prey meant to escape while Mung hunted them. Then he asked what would happen if the prey killed the hunter instead. Mung stared at him, surprised. The other selected students couldn't believe what Chin had just said. Mung acknowledged Chin's courage. As a reward, he promised him an extra vial of evolution potion. The butler immediately objected, saying the potion was extremely valuable. Mung coldly asked if he needed permission. The butler said no. Moments later, they were led to a cliff. Longson had 12 different training grounds within the forest. The first one was where the little dragon was hiding. The fifth training ground was the boulder plain. Beyond that were the second campus and the elite campus. Meng then explained the rules. The prey would be given a 30-minute head start. If they survived for 3 hours without being caught, they would win. He warned them not to be passive. If he caught them, he would send them to bed for half a year. He told them they could run, hide, or use any method. He added that they could also do what Chin suggested earlier, defeat him. But the probability of that happening was only 0.0000001%. Chin noted to himself that based on earlier behavior, the butler would never allow Mung to fail. After that, it was time to begin. The crocodile said they had no way up. At that moment, the butler, an old bird owl, a massive winged beast man, grabbed them with his talons. He asked his young master if he needed help going up as well. Mung declined, saying he would climb up himself as a warm-up. The owl carried the group into the air. When they were high enough, he suddenly let go. They dropped from the sky, screaming. They crashed down into the fifth training ground, known as the Boulder Plain. Meng watched and decided it was enough. He stripped off layers of clothing. His body shifted and transformed into an ape. At Training Ground 5, Boulder Plains. Crocodile urged everyone to run, saying they only needed to last 3 hours. In his mind, it was a good thing he dragged Chin along as a decoy. He believed Chin could stall for a while. His plan wasn't to outrun the beast, just the person next to him. Chin realized that Mung didn't even see them as a threat. He hadn't even bothered taking their phones. He also knew the old bird owl above would be watching everything. Chin took out his phone and called Garfield. She immediately asked where he went. When he mentioned the hunting game, she sounded shocked and told him he was done for. She said she would take care of the little dragon after he was gone. He replied that he still had 45 seconds of dragon flame saved this month, so surviving shouldn't be a problem. Still, he admitted he needed extra insurance and asked Garfield to help him contact someone. Meanwhile, Crocodile and the others finally stopped to catch their breath. Crocodile thought they had run far enough and that the loser should be far behind by now. He told himself it was Chin's fault for being useless, thinking the world was just that cruel. He was shocked when Chin suddenly appeared behind them and said that running separately wouldn't work. Crocodile turned and demanded to know why he was there. Chin ignored him and explained that even though a wild buffalo was stronger than a lion, it still became prey because of instinctive fear. He said they had the advantage, and their best chance was to work together and attack. Crocodile grew furious at being ignored. Before he could strike, Chin reached out and grabbed his face, stopping him instantly. Chin said he already knew all his little tricks and didn't care about them. He added that he didn't feel like explaining further, but there was only one thing Crocodile needed to understand. He would listen to Chin from now on. Elsewhere, Mung walked through the boulder plains. He stopped when he noticed a rustling sound. Suddenly, Chin burst out from hiding and rushed in to grab him. Meng reacted instantly, turning to meet the surprise attack as Chin closed the distance. He remarked that a frontal attack like this was bold. Chin said he wouldn't know anything unless he tried. He wanted to see the gap between himself and an elite. He kept charging, but Meng easily dodged every move since Chin was too slow. Meng mocked him, saying his skill didn't match his confidence. He even asked if Chin couldn't perform a beast transformation at all. Chin realized his opponent was insanely fast and that he couldn't land a single hit. Meng then chose to take a punch to the face. He commented that it was far too light. He found Chin boring. With a swift motion, he used his tail to strike Chin and sent him flying. Suddenly, Crocodile appeared behind him. Meng found the group attack strategy amusing. Meng kicked him in the jaw and slammed him to the ground. Skunk and Pangolin rushed in to help. Before they could act, Meng had already subdued both of them using his hand and tail. While pinning Crocodile under his foot and holding the other two by their necks mid-air, he laughed and said it was still boring. He was caught off guard when Chin revealed himself again and declared it was time for round 2. But unlike earlier, our boy had chosen to transform and use his dragon form now. Meng noted that Chin used his teammates just to create an opening, proving he wasn't a good person. Still, he believed Chin was so weak that he didn't even need to defend himself. But he was surprised. Chin's attack landed on his back, making him cough. The butler simply watched. Seeing the opening, Chin shouted to his allies that now was their chance. From afar, Old Bird Owl's view was blocked by the rocks. He wondered if Meng had been lured there on purpose. Still, he believed the young master could handle a test like this. Crocodile locked down Meng's legs. Skunk followed up immediately, throwing her special stink bomb. A cloud of green mist spread everywhere. Meng recoiled in disgust, complaining about the terrible smell and how it burned his eyes. Pangolin moved next. He rushed in quickly, delivering a flurry of strikes to Meng. Since it was really a tight space, their combo has been effective. Meng admitted their teamwork was good, but said their individual attacks were still too weak. It all felt like tickles. He added that he could break free any time. But in his mind, the most annoying one was Chin, because Chin kept slipping in hits that interrupted his counterattacks. Crocodile bit down on Meng's leg as he spun him around. That made Meng shout in pain. He couldn't believe what was happening, the area filled with dust and smoke from the chaos. Until Meng let out a sharp whistle. Crocodile, Skunk, and Pangolin thought they had won, but Chin sensed something was off. Two silhouettes suddenly appeared above them. Suddenly, a large ape holding a spear and shield appeared. It slammed Crocodile with a heavy punch, cracking the ground. The others were struck by another ape. Chin was shocked. The ape stood in front of Meng, protecting him. Chin felt the thrill as he realized Meng had battle pets too. And there were 2 of them. This is really getting more interesting. Meng said this had only been a small test at first. He hadn't planned to be ruthless, but now he had changed his mind. He told them he would kill them all. The large apes lunged from both sides, closing in on Chin. Chin bit his arm and activated Transcendence mode. He almost got hit by one of the apes, but Pangolin was struck instead. The other ape also hit Skunk instead of him. Chin caught them. Meanwhile, Crocodile called for his help, though he really didn't want to help him. One of the apes used Deep Slash. A powerful force sliced through the boulders. Chin realized a perfect offense and defense was happening, leaving no chance to counter. And his mode could only last 45 seconds. He thought about running, but he couldn't accept that. He was waiting for someone to arrive. Meanwhile, the old man owl observed that the young master had sent out Yinggu and Huking, making him wonder if something had happened. Suddenly, he sensed someone approaching. He demanded to know who was there. The man in the robe was glad he made it in time. He used Rainstorm, sending spikes down at the owl, but the old man owl blocked it with Shield Coil. Then he realized the target wasn't him, but the young master. Realizing this, one of the apes raised a shield and protected Meng. Old Man Owl mocked the attacker for launching such a weak strike, saying he must have underestimated the young master. He demanded to know who he was. The hooded figure said their mission was only to create an opening. Now that it was done, the best choice was to leave. He admitted he could only do so much, saying it was all for the sake of the little dragon. And just to clear this up, this hooded figure is Bao Bao, the professor last time. Chin realized they had made it, but he only had a split second to act. He told them to create as much chaos as possible and lure the 2 ape enemies away. He told one of them to create as much chaos as possible and asked if they could hold on. Pangolin replied that he was excited. He rushed forward and used Rolling Ground Dragon. Dust filled the air. Meng shouted not to think they could beat him so easily. Skunk paused for a moment, then said she would give it her all. Chin lifted her onto his back and they sped off. The ape tried to strike them, but Chin moved fast and dodged every hit. She was surprised by his speed. Meng saw him coming. He was shocked that Chin slipped past Huoqing's front attack. Dust and smoke surrounded them. His back was targeted, but one of the apes blocked Chin with its shield. Chin groaned from the impact. Meng laughed and said he was 10,000 years too early to break Huoqing's absolute defense. He frowned when he noticed someone in the sky. Skunk was falling. She said she would give it everything she had. She landed on him and pulled him into a kiss. It was her chance to use Special Blend Langshuan. Alright, that's it for today's story. If you want the weekly chapter updates for this series, those will now be uploaded on my second channel, Manhwa Updater. So if you don't want to miss what happens next, make sure to check it out and join the update gang. Thanks for watching, stay cool, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.